Alton had a cracker factory. And a cracker at that time, and I didn't bring any of my hardtack bread with me, but there was a cracker factory here at Alton. That's up on just up from the Lincoln Douglas Square. I'm trying to think of some of the buildings in there. What's the name of the place? It's a Mississippi mud pottery thing. Is in that area, but across the street from it. Okay, there was a big cracker factory, and down where the Casino Bell is now, they used to stack bread boxes. Were about so big, about this high, and they would stack thousands of those things down there by the landing, and then put them on steamboats and send them down to Cairo. Okay, soldiers would open up those bread boxes and take out that hardtack, and that hardtack bread would have mold on it, and they just scrape that off. And you didn't eat hardtack bread. Did you have anything like that, Mr. Coons, when you was overseas? Well, they fed you better then. Yeah. Because these guys would put the hardtack in there. You had a little, in your uniform over there, had a little pocket. And there's been many a guy that got shot, and the hardtack bread saved their life. Okay? There's a story, one guy he bit into one of those things, and he went, oh man, he goes, I bit into something soft. And the guy goes, what was it? A worm? And he goes, no, it was a nail. And so they had a reputation. Okay, now this is pretty interesting. The Civil War's over in 1865. Well, they take all the equipment, and they put it in warehouses and stuff, for reserve, right? 1898, we go to war with Spain. Okay, if you ever see any of the Spanish-American soldiers, they're still in blue wool. Okay, and they're still using Civil War equipment. They also gave them hardtack bread. Okay, that had been in storage for what, 30-some years? Okay. Now, I have a piece of hardtack in my collection that I've had for 25 years, and you couldn't eat it when I got it, and you couldn't eat it today, but it's it's still there. I mean, it's you take a gun or the butt of your pistol and you break it into small pieces. You throw it in hot coffee and you try and make it a little bit softer, okay, than what it is. But it was. It's made out of flour, salt, and water, so it can't have very much nutritional value. But nevertheless, Alton had a cracker factory and supplied crackers, hardtack bread for the Union Army. Guns, ammunition, horses, and troops arrived daily in Cairo, stopping briefly, only to be sent farther south to fight in those battles. Ship repair bases were located in southern Illinois along the Ohio River at Mound City, and proved to be very vital for the war effort also. Most of you are probably familiar that Alton had a Civil War prison camp, and there was two other prisoner of war camps, Camp Butler in Springfield and Camp Douglas up in Chicago. Raw materials, Illinois provided corn, wheat, livestock for the Union Army, as well as for the factory workers in the northern factories. In addition to that, we shipped tons of corn overseas to England. The South had proclaimed King Cotton. They thought the England would come into the war because of cotton. And Lincoln basically made the comment, you can't eat cotton. And he replaced King Cotton with King Corn. And it was Illinois corn, Indiana corn, Ohio corn, Iowa corn that was sent over to England. And became a very important tool in our relationships with England, with the North and the relationship with England. I found this one very fascinating. People write books on everything. There's you go to a bookstore and there's books on everything. I got a book not too long ago on horses and mules in the Civil War, and hadn't really stopped to think about that, a whole lot. But the Union Army alone used over 6 million horses and mules, and a number of those horses and mules came from here in Illinois and across the river in Missouri. Kentucky was the #1 horse and mule provider for the Union Army during the Civil War. 625,000 Americans died in the Civil War. 2.5 million horses and mules died in the Civil War. Okay, so they paid a very high price as well. The Germans down in southern Illinois raised large numbers of mules, and those mules at the beginning of the war sold for $25 a mule. By the end of the war, they were selling for $150 a mule. Inflation. The Illinois Central Railroad moved over 550,000 troops between 1862 and 1865. The Chicago Central moved 81,000 troops between 1861 and 1864, as the railroads proved to be very vital to the Union war effort. Okay? You could take troops from here in Illinois and have them in the Eastern Theater in 2 days' time. And although not very many troops from Illinois went there, troops from Iowa, Michigan, Wisconsin, okay, were moved back and forth as needed. So Illinois railroads played a very important role. Shipping on the Illinois River system moved over 1 million tons of war material during the course of the war. Ironclad ships were built over here in the East St. Louis area and also down at Mound City. In the area of military leadership, Illinois provided key military leaders during the war. I've already mentioned General John Logan. Although he was a Democrat and a political appointee, he turns out to be an excellent general. Very, very good general. Also, he is the man, after the war, who starts, very much like our VFW and American Legion organizations, he started what was called the GAR, the Grand Army of the Republic. And if you go to Murfreesboro, there's a statue of General Logan in Murfreesboro, and they have named their community college after him as well. General Buford, who I mentioned also. General Pope, John Pope, one of the more infamous generals of the Civil War, was from Illinois, nevertheless. And of course, the Central Illinois military leader was General Ulysses S. Grant. There were other generals. Some of them were German that I did not mention, but Illinois did provide a very solid core of military leadership. Political leadership. Governor Richard Yates was one of the administration's leading supporters. He was a Republican, a radical Republican. From Alton, Senator Lyman Trumbull, who was a close presidential advisor. And of course, the most significant leader of the Civil War was Abraham Lincoln. A couple of little factoids down here for you about Illinois. 100 Illinois men won the Congressional Medal of Honor during the Civil War. We now are finding out more and more that women participated in the Civil War. Not so much in the area of nurses, where they were really excluded, okay, but in actual combat units. And one of the more famous was a lady by the name of J.D. Cashier, who had served in an Illinois regiment, I think it was the 90-something Illinois, for 3 years. And they never found out she was a woman, okay. She served with these guys for 3 years, and they didn't know. Well, I've seen a picture of Miss Cashier, and she is not very attractive. Let's just call it ace and acer, okay? She's a rather homely looking girl, and she was about 5'3", and flat-chested and ugly, and so I can see why they wouldn't know she was a female. The other thing you have to understand is these guys never took a bath, okay? Army regulations in the Civil War said you had to wash your hands and your face every 10 days, okay? And the only time you really took a bath was if you crossed a river or happened to fall into one or something like that. So most of the time, you didn't see your buddies naked. When you went down to sign up, if you walked up to the recruiting table and you had 2 eyes and 2 legs and 2 arms, you could be in the Army, so you didn't have to have a physical. So it was easy for her to get in and easier for her to hide her identity. They found out that she was a female when she applied for her pension, okay? And doing some investigation, they were surprised to find out that she was a woman. In 1914, she was changing the tire on a Model T, and the Model T fell off the jack stand and broke her leg or something like that. Okay, and she died then from complications later on. So, but we do know that as we're doing research, more and more women were actually in combat than what we previously thought. Missouri. Missouri was torn by loyalties to the Union and to the Confederacy, and the fighting along the Missouri's western borders was a bloody affair and very indiscriminate. Today, you're